Hi guys, we are back. We are refreshed. Let's continue now with the questions on what we did before we went to our break. Question 1 here, the first question here, we're looking at the diagram. It's key to study the diagram before you attempt any question. So the diagram here, we see the structure of the brain, and we've got all those letters that indicates the part of the brain. So the first question will say you have to identify A and C. So because we just dealt with, you will tell me now what is A. So if you got it right, your answer should be, the answer for A is the spinal cord. The answer for B, we look at B here, is the corpus callosum. Move to the next question. It says we're still writing down letters and name of the parts there. We've got number A, the part that has the center for interpreting taste. Then number B for that, the second question is write down the letter and the name. Remember, you'll get a mark for a letter and you'll get a mark for the name. The first 2A will be you give the letter and the name that has the center for interpreting taste. Number B, the part that regulates the heart rate. Number C, the part that is responsible for motor coordination. I believe you've got answers now. Let's check if your answers are correct. Yes. Number 1, we said A is spinal cord, C is corpus callosum. 2A, you were supposed to give the letter and the name. So it's D, cerebrum, B, medulla oblongata, E, cerebellum. If you look at the answers here, there are ticks for a letter and the name. Letter and the name. Be careful not to forget to write both if the question says letter and name. So we've got other keywords there, myelin sheath. We talked to that when we started. It's just layer that covers the keywords here. We've got neuron. That is a specialized nerve cell which transmits the impulse. The cell body, it controls the metabolism of the cells. Then the dendrites, we did see the dendrites at the beginning. They carry the impulses to the cells, cell body. And we've got the axon that we talked to when we started. We say this axon carries the impulse away from the cell body, the dendrites to the cell body, the axon away from the cell body. Keywords, we continue. Myelin sheath, I did talk to that. It's just a fatty layer that covers the axon and the dendrites of the neuron. And it acts as an insulation and it speeds up the transmission of impulse. Remember the neuron, the function of the neuron is to transmit the impulse. Then we've got another new word there, the synapse, that point where impulse passes from a terminal branch to the axon of one neuron and to the dendrites of the next neuron. Neurotransmitters, they are the chemicals which carries impulse across the synapse. These are the key words. Then let's look at the types of neurons. I know for now you know the types of neurons. We'll just go through them and to remind you so that when you sit for your exams, you still remember. We've got the motor neuron, the interneuron, and the sensory neuron. If you look at these neurons, the motor neuron here, it takes the direction of the impulse here. And then the part that you need to know is the cell body, the nucleus, the dendrites, the axons, and the myelin sheath. You did see the function. Then the interneuron or the connector neuron, it's found between the motor neuron and the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron here, the word sensory, you will remember from the sense organs. So it takes the impulse to the spinal cord. Then the motor neuron here takes the impulse to the effectors. These are the three types of the neurons that you need to know. Then the functions. Here, I use different colors so that you should remember the functions. I already said the sensory neuron carries the impulse from the sense organ, sensory, and connector neuron or interneuron receives impulse from the sensory neuron, and it carries that impulse towards the motor neuron. And let's see what the motor neuron does. Motor neuron or effector neuron, because it takes the impulse to the effectors, the muscle or the glands. It carries impulse away from the central nervous system and carry the impulse to the effectors. Why to the effectors? For response. The synapse. That is the part, the space here between the neurons. It's that point, we did talk to it, where the impulse passes from the terminal branch of the axon to, these words are very important, to one neuron and to the dendrites of that neuron, of the next neuron. From this neuron to another neuron. How? The terminal branch of the axon of that neuron to the dendrites of the next neuron. Then we're talking about this gap, this opening here. This gap between the neurons, we refer to it as the synaptic gap. Then, because we did look at the neurons, the three types of neurons, the labelings and the functions, so let's take the questions now. I'm sure you'll be able to answer these questions. The first question here, it says various options are provided as possible answers to the questions. Then what do? You only choose the answer. So if you answer a question like this instruction, it's a multiple choice question, what you do, you first delete or do away with those that are not correct. And the last one that looks almost correct, you read again and make sure it's the correct one before you choose it. Which one of the following shows the correct diagram, direction of the impulse transmission through a neuron? Keywords here. We're looking for only one of the following. That does what? That takes the direction of impulse and transmits it through the neuron. Then there are the questions. The options. We've got A, that is the direction. We're looking at the direction, remember, of what? Of the impulse. Through what? Through a neuron. So what would be the direction? The first one says it's from the axon to the dendrite and to the cell body. The B says from the dendrites, axon to the cell body. Number C says cell body to the axon to the dendrites. Number D says dendrites to the cell body and axon. So direction, which one will be correct in this case? Number D will be correct. Why number D? Because the impulse cannot start at the axon. Axon is it's that part that is covered by the myelin sheath. So here we see dendrites again. From the dendrites cannot be straight to the axon. This cannot be correct. Then we don't take it. Because from the dendrite, it should be to the cell body if you remember the structure of the neuron. Number C, from the cell body already you know it cannot be. So the most important, the most correct one is D, because it gives us the correct sequence of the direction of the impulse. We move to the next one. The following is the functional connection between two consecutive neurons. We've got number A, receptor. We've got B, synapse. We've got C, neurotransmitter. We've got D, nucleus. D already is out. It cannot be a D because we're looking at the functional connection between two consecutive neurons. We said we delete what is not in. Receptor cannot be receptor. A synapse. Synapse should be the correct one. Let's see. Good. B is the correct one. Then number 4 here, we're looking at the diagram there that shows different types of neurons. We did neurons. And then it says, give only the numbers. When you answer, you only give the numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4 of 2 neurons. How many? 2 neurons. That does what? That transport impulses from receptor to the central nervous system. Then let's look. That would be number 1 and number 4. The 2 neurons are the ones that transport impulses from the receptor to the central nervous system. The next question, still based on the diagram. You give the number 1, 2, 3 only. You don't write the words. Number B says the one that will have a faster transmission of impulse. Which one between the 4? They say the right one here, the answer is number 3 and number 1. The next one, still the same instruction. The one that are damaged if a person can feel the stimulus but unable. The key word there, unable. They can feel, but they are unable to do what? To react. Which one? You remember the functions? I believe you've got the right answer. Here's the right answers. That's number 2 and number 3. Guys, we need a break. Let's go for ad break, and while we are on the ad break, grab a glass of water, then we come back and continue.